Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Of course, big game on the horizon tomorrow. Norwich's final championship home game of the season for the regular campaign. Hopefully, there's going to be another one, of course, in a few weeks' time in the playoffs. Swansea, the visitors to Carrow Road. Adam Harvey, joined by Connor Southwell for your preview show. Lots to get through in sort of the next half an hour or so. We want your comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, score predictions, whatever it might be. Get them down in the comment section below, and we'll come around to those very shortly. Connor, I mean, it's a week on since that draw against Bristol City. We've had a little bit more clarity since then, of course, with Hull and Coventry playing during the week. We kind of now know the route and what it's going to take for Norwich to get into the playoffs. Do you think that probably helps Norwich now moving forwards into these last two games? They probably know that 3 points, I know the goal difference would then come into play, but 3 points probably all but secures it.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? All but mathematically, I guess, because of the 7 goal difference in terms of that goal difference, as you mentioned. And it's funny how the game works. It may be that a result for Ipswich Town tomorrow does the job for Norwich City. They're obviously away at Hull, so yeah, it does help. I think it focuses minds of players, of coaches, of fans as well, and it should make for hopefully what is a really enjoyable final, maybe penultimate home game of the championship campaign. So yeah, really interesting one, and I do think, irrespective of what David Wagner said yesterday, I think there'll be a desire on all sides, to be fair, because it was just very flat last weekend, wasn't it, for everybody. I think there'll be a desire to try and put that right as well. So yeah, an opportunity to finish the job. Maybe in all but name, but it is there, as David said yesterday. So yeah, feels like a big and decisive weekend for Norwich City either way.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the sort of flat atmosphere a little bit last week. I've seen that the game sold out. I've seen that on social media this morning. That probably shows the appetite for this game. The fans will head to Carrow Road knowing what it's sort of what it's going to take. I suppose they're going to want to see Norwich pick up 3 points, expecting sort of a maybe not an exact replica of the Ipswich game, but certainly a better atmosphere than we saw last week tomorrow. I know the game often dictates that, and last week wasn't exactly, a sort of glowing performance from a Norwich perspective, but it feels like everyone kind of is going to be fully on board tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so, because it's like, you're approaching the finish line, and so you give it one last push, don't you? I think that's human nature in terms of everybody. So yeah, I think I would expect everything to be more improved, performance, result, hopefully, and fan atmosphere as well. So yeah, and particularly given the fact it's against a team who don't have a lot to play for, and that's not always a good thing. We saw that last week with Bristol City. It can create a freedom, and there is always something to play for. I think I don't really buy that argument that as soon as your season's dead and buried, that's it. Individually, players are playing for contracts, and teams are playing to try and get momentum and form heading into next season, and to try and create a little bit more of a positive atmosphere, which Swansea have done in the last few weeks. So yeah, it's by no means a gimme, and that means that the supporters are going to have to be up for it, that the players are going to have to be up for it, that they're going to have to produce. And when you think about this Norwich side, they have had on more often than not nerves of steel. You think about some of the occasions that they've come through, that Preston game a couple of weeks ago, Hull, West Brom at home, Coventry at home, some Ipswich at home, of course. All of those occasions have required enormous bottle. And they've had to basically fight adversity since about mid-November, and they've done it, and they've got themselves in a position. So I think, there is a degree of those players, David Wagner and his coaching team as well, probably being owed that type of atmosphere to help drive them across the line. So look, and you mentioned it, clarity is a big thing. And I think there will be a collective effort from everybody just to try and almost push the team over the line tomorrow, because it would save, I think, what could be. And I think we spoke about this a little bit last week, what could be perhaps a slightly precarious away trip to Birmingham, if there's anything riding on that game, which of course they could still be.
Yeah, relatively positive team news update yesterday. Grant Hanley, a bit of a late call, but of course maybe an opportunity for him to come back into the matchday squad. Dimi Yanulis back in training next week, which of course is a huge boost potentially ahead of some big playoff games. Johnny Rose, the one I wanted to touch on. Of course, we saw an extended sort of appearance from him last week. He played 35 minutes against Bristol City. Relatively quiet probably for him, but we know kind of the build-up of trying to get him back to sort of his full match sharpness, I suppose. How do Norwich approach that one tomorrow? I know we kind of Wagner's sort of intimated trying to build his minutes up. Do you expect him to be in from the start tomorrow? Probably feels unlikely, but how do they, I suppose, build off what they've already done now with him?
Yeah, I think it's about caution, isn't it? When you've had a player of that importance out for the period of time that he has, if there is any sort of sign, I think that's been documented by this week, that there's an issue, that there's a reoccurrence, that there's any kind of twinge of, and he said he was feeling pain. then immediately you go and get that scanned and you get to the bottom of it. And I think because of that, they'll likely try and adopt caution around that. So I'd probably expect him to be in a similar role as he was last week. With obviously a mind of, if you can get him back into a position where potentially he's able to start in a playoff semi-final, or he's able to come on and really impact a playoff semi-final in a lot better position than he is, now fitness wise, then I think that is the way to go with him, I suspect. And I think also, and we've had this debate endlessly, be it in the car on the way to games or or on podcasts. It's very difficult to see where you slot him in at the moment in terms of form. Gabriel Sara's done very well off the right. I thought they looked a significantly poorer team in possession when Marcelino Nunez went off last week, albeit they scored a goal immediately after that substitution was made. And Borja Sainz, I think, is who increasingly, to me, probably feels like the candidate where you would look to make a change. Scored last week, although having watched that back a few times, I think there is maybe an argument for offside, which I haven't seen discussed too much, but hey-ho, it counted, and that's the beauty of a VAR-less world. It feels to me like maybe he's the one that is going to come under scrutiny, and with Rowe coming back to with Rowe coming back to full fitness, it creates competition, it pushes players, and so that's the flip side of this as well. So yeah, again, I think Norwich needs to get him in a position where he is able to, be it from the start, be it from the bench, hopefully ready to impact a playoff campaign, because as we've seen this season, he is a man that produces big moments, writes his own scripts, wants to be a headline grabber, and he's done that superbly well. And there's no bigger headline to write really than if you can do that in a playoff semi-final, or maybe even a playoff final itself.
Yeah, we spoke about clarity, and a few people in the comments kind of referencing a point I was going to reference a little bit later on in the show, but we'll do it now. Dan Mayhew, let's hope West Brom bottle it and we can get fifth. John as well on YouTube, it'd be good to overhaul the baggies. Or is that being too greedy? I suppose given kind of the situation now, it feels like Southampton are pretty much nailed on to finish fourth. So if you finish fifth, you likely get them, and then it's probably going to be one of Leeds or Ipswich for the side that finishes sixth. With all that context, I mean, Connor, does that sort of maybe add any difference for sort of, I suppose, your opinion on where Norwich need to finish? I know we had this debate last week in sort of the podcast, and we sort of maybe felt it probably doesn't really matter given it's, a playoff game, and Norwich are ultimately going to be the underdogs given, the position relative to the side they're going to play.
Yeah, I'm not sure there is hugely. I mean, I was kind of thinking to myself, and I obviously watched the Southampton-Leicester game in the week, and you look at that game, and I think it's hard not to kind of sit there and go, oh, yeah, you'd fancy Southampton. But actually, I think that word that you used, clarity, the fact they know where they're going to be, that their minds are going to be really focused and set on the playoffs now, and they've almost got 2 weeks now really to prepare for that, to get all of that frustration and anger out of their system, to maybe tweak some elements that can help them get to there. But I think I look at Norwich as a side and the qualities they have in transition and the way that they like to play the game. And I think you would feel maybe Southampton being the best fit for them, in which case it would have to be a fifth place finish. But let's be honest, you've got to get there first, and Norwich have still got to get there. It's not a done deal as we sit here today. It's looking obviously likely, and it can be done tomorrow. So maybe this is a debate for then. But yeah, I think what I've got in my head is basically I wouldn't want Norwich to play Leeds on the evidence of what we've seen this season. Ipswich is probably, if it wasn't an East Anglian derby and it didn't have everything around it, would be the one that you'd look at and go, well, Norwich, they're the only team that out of the four that Norwich have beaten all season. That Carrow Road occasion, brilliant, bring it on. But the derby element to that, the jeopardy over 2 legs, how good they've been this season, they're not going to be as bad as they were at Carrow Road over 2 legs, that's for sure. I think that could be a really dangerous one, and I don't really see what people are seeing when they're talking that up, if I'm being honest, but that's just me. I can understand the desire and the want for that game over 2 legs as well. So yeah, that kind of leaves you with Southampton, who Norwich haven't lost against this season. I think they were incredibly fortunate not to get beat at Carrow Road on New Year's Day. Going back to August, I thought that was so chaotic, that game. It was very difficult to see where either side kind of ranked, but just a really entertaining game where both teams made errors. Both teams, Norwich probably felt they could have won it, but I thought in the second half Southampton were much better than them again. So I'm looking at it and going, probably in 3 halves out of 4 against Southampton, they've been, maybe even 4 halves out of 4 against Southampton, they've been the inferior side, but I thought they probably slightly edged the first half at St Mary's. So we'll say 3, but could be argued 4. So again, and this is the reality, you're playing 4 top teams who have been far and away better than anybody in the division. So it's up to anybody to decide what sort of advantage you can get from that. So yeah, I feel Norwich in the position they are in at the moment, particularly at Carrow Road, and that if they do get there, that playoff semi-final is going to be so huge. But increasingly, I probably feel like Southampton would be the team that you would want because of how this Norwich team's set up and the way they want to play and the fact that they are pretty comfortable without the ball. So, but does it make a huge amount of difference? I'm not sure it will, if I'm being honest. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult whoever Norwich City play.
Yeah, we'll just worry about getting there first, get it all
Yes.
secured. That's kind of got to be the first point of call. Big news yesterday, of course, Kenny McLean, Player of the Season award. David Wagner, you asked him yesterday around it. Just going to play that clip now, and then we'll talk a bit more about the mayor.
Yes, I would have chosen him as well. But the truth is, as well, I was a little bit surprised that so many of our supporters has chosen him as well, because normally the players who score the goals, the players who are super strong in the spotlights win awards like this. And this is naturally, because of his position, not what normally Kenny gets, but this only shows how sensible and how smart our supporters are when they vote for him, and he fully deserved this award. I'm very happy that he got it. Obviously, he is in this football club quite a while. He got now this award and his rewards. Maybe he improved. I only can judge the time when I'm here with him. I don't know exactly what he has done and how he was before we are here. But since we are here, you have to judge, does he improve since we arrived? But what I can say is he is an outstanding athlete, a top trainer, super competitive mindset, very emotional, and I think one of his big improvements since we worked together is that he was able to control his emotions, that he does not get out of the game for 10-15 minutes when his emotions were not or got driven away. This is, I think, one of his biggest improvements, and he is one of the most reliable, or maybe the most reliable player which we have, and I'm very, very happy for him. And apart from this, he is a good person as well.
Yeah, his name on the trophy for the first time. Of course, been at Norwich for quite a while now. 224 appearances, 13 goals, 23 assists. I mean, he's sort of had difficult patches, I'd say, during that spell. You know, I mean, Dan kind of references it here. You know, great to see the mayor win. I voted for him. It's excellent redemption, given it wasn't that long ago he was a scapegoat. Never understood the aggro. I mean, he was a scapegoat, particularly kind of in sort of the Premier League times where maybe fans felt he wasn't up to the standard, and even in the Championship at times he's come under fire. But this season, been consistent wherever he's been asked to play, whether that's been left centre half, midfield. You know, he's played a sort of juggler of positions throughout his Norwich City career, left back, right back, in almost everywhere in the team, really. Deserved winner. I know we kind of had this debate at the end of the podcast last week. You felt that he was going to win it. He has won it. I think, you know, for a lot of fans, he probably was the man that was going to, you know, get the title this time around.
Yeah, I think so, and I think what he brings to the team isn't necessarily measured completely by statistics. And I understand that they play a major part, particularly in the modern game. But what he has offered them in terms of consistency, in terms of positioning, in terms of leadership, in terms of sacrifice as well, willing to put himself into uncomfortable areas for the benefit of the team. And I think there is probably an element of personal growth as well. The journey that he's been on at Norwich City, and Dan documented it there. Someone who maybe has changed his image a little bit at Norwich City, and I think it probably ultimately, and this was a debate I was having with the Radio Norfolk guys yesterday. I think it boils down to what you feel, as in, you know, you, everyone watching and everyone who voted, what you feel constitutes a player of the season. Is it the best player? Because has he been Norwich City's best player this season in terms of quality? No. But has he been their most consistent, the most reliable? Yeah, I think he probably has been. If you're voting on those merits and you're voting on importance and consistency and reliability, he's been ever present. He's played all bar, I think, about 20 minutes of the season, which was the last few minutes away at Middlesbrough in that defeat. And then obviously the game was at Rotherham, where he was on, you know, risk if he'd have got booked, he'd got a suspension. They whipped him off with about half an hour to go. So yeah, look, I think it's very hard to mount a case that it shouldn't have been him. And this is the way that I always try and do it. I think Gabriel Sara, if he'd have won it, would have been as worthy. His goal contributions, his quality, I absolutely love him as a player to watch. he's for me Norwich City's best player. If you're ranking it like that, but equally I can understand why he hasn't been voted as player of the season. So I think both things can be true. You can not necessarily be best player in terms of quality, but you can be the most important, most reliable, most consistent. And you can be player of the season off the back of that. So yeah, I wouldn't have had any arguments if either of those had won it. And it felt to me that was pretty nailed on. One gripe I do have, Adam, is how the hell has Angus Gunn not got in the top three? It's the second year in a row it feels like he's been robbed. I can't remember who got third place last year, but it certainly wasn't him. The saves he's produced, the fact that for me he's the best goalkeeper in the Championship. He's bailed Norwich out on multiple occasions, as he did last week, and basically turned what would have been 0 points into a single point. And this isn't a slight on Josh Sargent as well, who obviously has been tremendous, and we've all seen the impact that he's had. I just wonder if there's a little bit of recency bias behind this, because yeah, for me, Angus Gunn should have been absolutely nailed on in that top three. So yeah, that's the only issue I have with the voting. But yeah, anything else, I think you could. It was difficult to argue against those top two being in the position they were, and likewise, if it would have been flipped, I think it would have been very hard to argue that it shouldn't have been that way as well.
Yeah, it's quite nice to kind of have this debate of who should be in the top three for once. I know last year we were sort of scraping the barrel a bit and sort of wondering who it would be. Of course, Gabriel Zara picked it up, deservedly so, based on his sort of second half of the season performances. But this time round, yeah, Johnny Rowe probably in another team in another time, probably would have won it at Cantor, to be honest, because his injury has blighted that a little bit. We'll turn back to the game. Swansea, the visitors, as I mentioned, 14th in the division at the moment, in a little bit of transition, I suppose. Last season they finished 10th under Russell Martin, 3 points outside the playoffs. So a sort of lack of investment, I suppose. In the summer they lost Pirro, they lost Manning, they lost Abafemi, sort of some really good Championship players there. They bring in Michael Duff. Didn't work out. They've gone down the route of Luke Williams now, of course, who spent some childhood here years in Norwich City's academy. As he referenced yesterday, some sort of nice snippets of sort of his time at Carrow Road. What sort of test do you think Swansea are going to bring to Carrow Road tomorrow, Connor? Because it feels like they're a very footballing team. I know David Wagner kind of spoke about them liking ball possession. They're going to have try and dominate the ball, but it's just then about Norwich utilising their sort of pacey players, their wide men, and sort of trying to unlock the pockets that they require to get the goal.
Yeah, I think it will be a similar test, if I'm honest, to what Bristol City showed last week. I think they'll be comfortable on the ball. They'll try and press Norwich in the right areas, and then it will come down to the mechanics of whether or not they can A, set up their press right, but equally B, carry it out with the same consistency and reliability that Bristol City did. And obviously then it's dependent on Norwich City's performance levels and how they make use of the ball as well in those key moments. I really like Luke Williams. I think he's an excellent coach. I think you look at the job he did at Notts County. His teams are open. They concede good chances, although they haven't conceded a goal in 3 games. But they create really good opportunities as well. They're good to watch. And again, like similarly, a conversation we were having with Liam Manning last week, I think you give him a full season and a full summer to really stamp his authority on that. And I think you would expect Swansea to be in a vastly superior position to what they are. I mean, almost shocked me looking at the league table, because it felt like they were in relegation trouble a few weeks ago, but that isn't the case. And that's a testament, I think, to the job that he's done. I think it's one that's going to be a slow burner for them, but very, very talented young coach. Again, very similar to what we were talking about in terms of Liam Manning. So it's going to be a difficult test. And as I said right at the start, I think anyone who thinks it's going to be a gimme or it's going to be routine because Swansea have very little to play for, I think are going to get a rude awakening. It's going to be tight. It's going to be a fierce contest. I mean, you look in the last few games and okay, they played Stoke, they played Rotherham, they played Huddersfield, but they scored 8 goals in their last 3 games and haven't had a lower average, haven't had a lower share of the ball than 50%. In fact, that 50% against Stoke was the lowest share of the ball that they've had in quite some time. They rank around the 60-70% markers, which we know. And David said it yesterday. Possession isn't everything, but they've lost 3 games in their last. Hang on, I'm going to have to do maths here. Their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 3 defeats in 11. I mean, they come to Carrow Road in really good form. And not one to be underestimated. And I think do that at your peril, really, with this Swansea side. I like the way they play, the way that they set them up as or set themselves up as a football club. Obviously, the issue is when you have coaches like Russell Martin, Graham Potter, Luke Williams now as well, is when it gets going, those coaches are very attractive to other suitors and they quickly go elsewhere. So that's the problem they've got. But yeah, I really like Luke Williams. I like the way he sets his teams up. And I think this is going to be perhaps a little bit more testing, as Bristol City was last week, than some people expected for Norwich City.
Yeah, I'm going to get your score prediction and thoughts and feelings in a moment. But just a couple of things off the pitch this week, of course, that have made the news. Dan Barden yesterday signing a new contract for a couple of years. I mean, given everything that he's had to deal with, that sort of through injury and illness at different points, and to come through that adversity and come out the other side with a new deal, that must be positive for him personally, but also Norwich. We've seen it sort of in that time where he dropped into that team, and he was very consistent, for a young man who was sort of put in under pretty, high pressure situation away at Cardiff, and he sort of held himself. And I think it was at QPR at home. He came on at that season as well. So, yeah, what do you make of that one?
Yeah, there's two elements to this, isn't there? There's the human side, which is lovely. You've got a young lad there, 23, who obviously has had some unbelievable adversity in the last few years, a testicular cancer diagnosis, which, thank God he's fought through and received the all clear from. The fact that, he got back playing football, I think 7 months after it was publicly announced, is an absolutely incredible feat for anybody. And then, compounded by an ACL injury last year that has brought him out essentially for 10 months. I mean, we saw his first appearance for Norwich City in any capacity in January away at Manchester United when he returned for the under-21s. Before then, he had a loan to Maidstone and played a few games, ruptured his ACL and was out for 10 months. I mean, it's an incredible amount to go through at such a young age and such a young spell. And obviously that cancer diagnosis came whilst he was out on loan in Scotland at Livingston, when he just had that season and he was looking to kick on as well. And the fact on a human level, he's had to deal with all of that. I'm sure it's tough, and it was interesting to see in his club interview. He said that it's kind of made him stronger as it would do, and I think it adds to maybe that sense of maturity that you were speaking about that we've all saw, because at the base of all of that, you park the human element, and there is a very talented young goalkeeper there, and we all saw it. We all saw it in full display in that title-winning campaign, what he could offer, the authority that he played with, the application that he showed, and the fact, all the words that Daniel Farke said about him at the time, that his teammates said about him at the time. He was almost like an unsung hero that season for what he did. And I was at that game where I think it was would have been cruel, wouldn't it? Did he go off, or was he injured beforehand? Then McGovern went off as well, and he had to come on, and it was a remarkable state of affairs. And to watch this young lad come on, and I think one of the first things he did was pluck a cross out of the sky amid a load of senior pros. I mean, it was incredibly impressive. So there's a good goalkeeper there. I do wonder whether the next step is going to be a loan for him, and he kind of spoke about that a little bit in his club interview. And I think he needs to get out and play minutes again consistently, and hopefully that's the aim for him next season. But yeah, a very talented goalkeeper, one that I think is fairly low risk for Norwich City over the next 2 years to see how he develops. You give him a year and you see where you are next summer. So yeah, really pleased for him, and hopefully now it's the foundation for him to kick on, which I think is what we all hoped he would do after that title-winning campaign.
Yeah, and then the other big piece of news that's been rumbling on for months and months now, Mark Atanasio's increased involvement in Norwich City. Of course, his led group, Norfolk Holdings, they've increased their stake to 40.4%, which brings them level with Michael and Delia. Obviously now been cleared by the EFL. We know that that's now all rubber stamped and signed off. Do you think that probably, I know you sort of asked this to David Wagner yesterday, it just provides a little bit more clarity for those within the football club and obviously the supporters as well, knowing sort of the future of the club? Do you think that's a really positive thing now going forwards?
Yeah, it is. I think maybe more so externally than internally, because the way they've been operating since really the vote in October is that this was the reality anyway. So it's more a formalization of that. I think it has been used at points quite harshly as a stick to beat the club with, because it was out of their control. It was the EFL and the red tape that basically meant that this was a long process. I saw a lot of comparisons with West Brom's ownership situation. Oh, well, how can that get done so quickly when Norwich has been rumbling on for all these time? And the simple reality is there's mathematics involved, because the West Brom one, there was one person going through kind of the owners and directors test in fully and having to provide proof of funds. On Norwich City's basis, that was multiple people and even into double figures, etc. So that gives you an indication of why it's taken so long for all of those people to go through those tests and to meet those various tests, and for it all to eventually get rubber stamped. So that's why it has taken 6 months or however long it's taken. It's not been anything that Norwich have done or could have controlled or could have sped up. It was completely in the EFL's hands, and the nature of that test and the nature of the way it works is you get a more urgent case that comes in. West Brom was more urgent when it came in because their situation was pretty precarious. Reading have obviously got a very live ownership situation as well. This is where the priority of their resources has gone. So yeah, really good, and it's clarity that everyone needed. It's obviously historic, really. It's the first time this millennium, really, that definitely that Norwich haven't been owned, or Dealer and Michael haven't been the majority shareholders of the football club. So it is a seismic moment, and I think we're all waiting with bated breath to kind of see what the next step is. And I think maybe we'll have to wait a little bit longer, but obviously there'll probably be a financial necessity at some point for Norwich to need to go to Mark Atanasio, particularly if they remain in the Championship, and that will mean more shares and ultimately more control. So I wouldn't necessarily maybe put too much acclaim or too much. I wouldn't put too much pressure on the 3-year thing. I think that's there and everyone can see it, but it would not, and I've said this throughout, to be fair, it would not surprise me if it moved a little bit quicker than that. And the reality is, if Norwich did not get promoted to Premier League this season, definitely next season, the reality is things would have to move a little bit quicker, and they'd have to find other ways to externally source themselves. And that is, what has been said in their accounts that they've released in the last 2 years. So that's not new information. I think it is very much watch this space, but it's good news that it's all got ratified. And the good news is, hopefully, if that event does happen in the future, this isn't a hurdle that will need to be cleared in the same way that has been this time. He's been subject to, as all people are when they take major stakes into football clubs, really, really big regulations and boxes to tick, and that's all now been done. So yeah, it does provide clarity, but I think internally that's been the case for a little while, so I don't think it will change too much in terms of the way the club have been operating.
And then finally, before I get your score prediction, Gabriel Zara beaten for the Goal of the Month award.
Scandalous.
I was going to say, how criminal is it, Connor? Beaten by Yokoslu at West Brom, which it was a good strike, against Huddersfield. But for me, probably the technique element, I felt Zara was probably a shoe-in to win it.
Do you know, I always rank these things on, is that a goal that, 1 in 1,000 I could score? And I think the Yokosulu one is one that most people could do who have, you can strike a ball. I think you could do that 1 in 1,000 times. That's not to say it's an easy strike and it's not difficult to execute, etc. And obviously the magnitude of it and all of that stuff, I recognize that, but it's just a better goal, isn't it? Gabriel Sara's goal is just a better goal. The technique on it, the ability, the fact that he's got his foot so high, his body position is as it is, the way he's controlled it, and caressed it almost into the top. It's an unbelievably hard skill. There are professional footballers, probably in Norwich's team, who couldn't do what Gabriel Sara has done. I think most professional footballers could do what Yokosul done in that game. So yeah, I'm gobsmacked really that it's not one. I think there is still another one though, isn't there? Which is that one that's voted on by supporters, or is this the same one? So. I think there's a possibility that justice could be done. But yeah, absolutely shocked that he didn't win that award, because to me it felt like an absolute shoe-in.
Yeah, he sort of referenced it, I think, on the club channels this week as the best goal he's ever scored in his career. So, he'll be a little bit disappointed, maybe. Come around to that point in the show, score prediction time. Tends to be goals between Norwich and Swansea. I think as you go into the record, I brought it up and I was quite intrigued. If you go back historically, Swansea have won 25 games against Norwich City. Norwich have won 25 games against Swansea, and there's been 10 draws. So these two sides are as evenly matched as they come. That said, there's not been a draw between the two sides in the last 10 meetings. So one side's always come out on top with all that context and everything we've spoken about so far. Big opportunity tomorrow for Norwich to probably pretty much all but secure playoffs. Norwich City victory tomorrow, Connor.
Yeah, I think so. And I've got another stat to throw into that, which is they've lost just 2 of their last 16 home league games against Swansea, winning 11 of those. Although, one of those did come last season in that what was a pretty, I don't even know what word I would use, shambolic 3-0 defeat at Carrow Road. So, I think because of the magnitude on it, because of David Wagner's words, because of the clarity that we spoke about earlier in the show, I think Norwich City are going to be absolutely desperate to win this game. And that can sometimes lead you to getting over emotional, and that can lead to a flat performance. I think we saw a little bit of that last week. But I think having gone through what we went through last week, it would be so surprising if Norwich City were unable to come through this game, I think. So, yeah, I'm going to go for I was going to say a big Norwich win, but I don't know if you class 3-1 as a big Norwich win. So, yeah, I'm going to go 3-1 Norwich, and then I think, I'll whisper this, I think Ipswich will beat Hull, so I think that will be enough to guarantee it, and then we can all go to Birmingham in our flip-flops and in our shorts and put our feet up and enjoy the final day of the season without worrying too much about what goes on underneath Norwich City. That's my hope anyway. What about you, Adam?
There you go. I can imagine that's going to be clipped out and all over socials tomorrow night. Erase that thought from your memory if you're still watching this. Going down to the comments quickly before I give mine. Peter's gone for a 2-0 Norwich City victory. Any late score predictions, get them down below. Yeah, you kind of nicked my prediction. I was going to go for a 3-1 Norwich, but I feel like I'm going to have to go for something different. So let's add a couple more goals on. Let's go for Norwich 4, Swansea 2.
Oh, nice. Don't get many 4-2 predictions.
No, I'm going to go with that. I think Swansea they've conceded the most goals of any side in the top 18 in the championships. They definitely concede a few. They like to score goals as well. Norwich, have been pretty solid at the back more generally across recent weeks. But, I think Swansea are a good football inside and maybe they'll get a few opportunities and bury them. They've got, Jamal Lowe, who likes to score goals against Norwich City. Jerry Yates is a decent enough forward. So they've got a few options there. But yeah, I think let's go for a goal fest and Norwich to all but secure playoffs. Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like it could be a draw maybe between Ipswich and Hull or potentially an Ipswich victory, which of course would do Norwich a favour in some respects. Depending on how Leeds get on tonight, I suppose that will be extra motivation for Ipswich, depending on that. Late comment here from NCFC1 on YouTube. He's going for a 3-1 Norwich City win as well. I think, yeah, that's going to be a common theme maybe of, this big game tomorrow afternoon. With that, we'll probably sign off now. Lots of good content across the Pink 'Un channels at the moment. Of course, you've got David Wagner's press conference from yesterday afternoon. Lots of stuff around sort of Abu Kamara, Dan Barden, the game itself, Mark Atanasio. So that's well worth going and checking out. Sam's tactics board is now up, so you can watch his sort of predicted 11 and more of a breakdown of the tactical elements of this game and where it could be won and lost. I spoke to a Swansea fan on Terrace Talk, which is well worth checking out, sort of a breakdown of their season and sort of the transition under Luke Williams. It is also the final day of our competition at the moment, where you can win a sort of copy of Football Manager, which is, a well-renowned game, which we are now on. You can get questions from the Pink 'Un, as you've probably heard through us through recent weeks. This is the email. The question is, what colour card does a player receive when they get sent off? Very difficult question there. I mean, little hint, but it's not yellow.
No Googling on that.
No Googling. And I'll give a clue. It's not yellow. So yeah, that probably helps you out. The email is ec.competitions@localiq.co.uk. Subject line: Pink 'Un Football Manager competition. So I'd imagine you've got till 11:59 tonight to get your entries in. And of course, we'll announce the winner in due course. Of course, we've got the Pink 'Un Plus app as well, which is well worth checking out. $2.99 a month. You can take out a free trial. Lots of good content coming your way there. Probably coming up into these next few weeks. Potentially playoff games on the horizon. I think it's no better time to maybe go and give that a look and see if you want to join us on that journey. With that, we're going to sign off. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Hopefully the sun might come out. It's a little bit grey outside ahead of what should be a good game tomorrow afternoon at Carrow Road.